Hello, everyone. We're getting started soon. Is my video frozen?
Nope, I can see you moving.
Yeah, we see you moving.
Oh, good. Okay. Hello, everyone. I have the attendees. Oh, here we go. I just want to make sure that Shay, now that we're live, we are going to get started momentarily. I'm super excited to have this amazing group here, and so many people reached out, and we originally were raising money for Bright Score Academy. It's students helping students, and so many people reached out and asked if they could come, because of COVID, having financial troubles. So I actually opened it up for free, and it was a donation that was suggested, and the people that actually paid in advance, I asked them if they wanted to get a refund, and they didn't. So that was really lovely. So many people were supporting the Bright Score Academy, and of course we want to make this available to as many people as possible. Okay, everyone, it's 6 o'clock. So here we are behind the scenes, the makings of a TEDx and a TED Talk. So I have here this amazing super panel with some incredible people that are all sort of part of my inner circle, and I'm so blessed and lucky to have everyone here. And the other thing I wanted to mention is International Women's Entrepreneurship Day today. So how apropos that we are surrounded by some power women here, and of course power Erica too. So I'm going to introduce the host. So it's myself, Cindy Messer. I'm co-organizer of TEDx Boca Raton. I have Eric Vince here, who is the organizer of TEDx Boca Raton. We've been working together since 2017 on this initiative. And then we have Joy McAdams with us, who is our beautiful co-host with us tonight. And for those of you who don't know Joy, she's in Cozumel. Most of you might be following her on LinkedIn. She's in Cozumel going to do an Ironman this week. So her internet connection might be a little bit spotty. And then I'm going to introduce three amazing ladies who were on the TEDx stage with us. Cece and Christina were on the TEDx stage in 2018. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about their stories, and then I'm going to also, of course, introduce Heather Monahan. She did an incredible TEDx last year with us, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about it. But I think everyone here has a really unique experience with TEDx, how they got involved with it, how they got connected with us, how the submission process, the preparation process, and we just keep hearing again and again from so many people who want to learn more about TEDx. And Eric and I are starting to plan 2021 right now, and we have some exciting news about that. So I think what I'll do is I will hand it over. Joy, do you want to just make an introduction, and then we'll go off to the ladies?
Sure, absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Let's start with that.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I see I'm blinking in and out, so I'll try not to move. But sure, first of all, I'm just so impressed with each of you. I watched your TEDx, obviously, and I was just so inspired, so challenged. Each topic was different, but, it's something that I'm an aspiring TEDx speaker, so I am still trying to find my topic, find my right timing, and it's definitely on my bucket list of something I want to do. So of course I'm excited to get in the right room, like I say, with all of you, and just learn as much as I can as I prepare and plan my journey to doing a TEDx. And I think I'm going to have a lot of the same questions that someone who hasn't done their talk yet would have. So that's one of the reasons Cindy asked me to be on here.
Yes. And Eric and I, there's a submission process and a curation speaker process, and I'll let Eric, say hello, and then we'll start with the ladies. And we definitely want everyone to walk away tonight with some actionable tips, some insider information. We'll be speaking from 6 to 7, and then we'll have a Q&A from 7 to 7:30. So Eric, hello, welcome.
Hi, good to be here. I took over from the previous organizer in 2016. She had her last event at Meisner, and that was Becky Woodbridge, and she left the state. And then I went through the process to get the license and got it in 2017. And then the first person I went to was Cindy. And then we did our first event, obviously, in 2018, and we did one in 2019. And of course, nothing's happened in 2020, but we are planning something unique for 2021. Cindy, did you want me to talk about the selection process real quick?
Yeah, let's start with that, and then everyone can share their experiences. We'll just talk briefly about the selection process and then hand it over to the ladies, because I know people are chomping at the bit to get the inside scoop from them too.
Yeah, so different TEDx teams, organizers tend to develop their own process for speaker curation. That you go to these schools and you learn how to do it from TED, and then you kind of develop your own, which we've done. I would say half the speakers we curate ourselves, and the other half go through a submission process. When people submit online, that's when what we call the steering committee kind of kicks into action, and we will whittle down the list until we get what we want. It usually starts with, I think the one thing I would tell people, the way that you get voted off the island is when you start promoting yourself. If it's, you have a business and it starts to become self-promotional, it's easy to knock people out of the box. So there's generally three things that TED really discourages: self-promotion, religious proselytizing, and politics. Politics gets a little dicey because there's a lot of good topics like on climate change and things, and I don't consider those political topics. But, generally taking a side would be bad. But for the people that submit, we go through this process of, I would say it's a little statistical in nature. And we've developed it over the last couple of years, and it's become very effective. The steering committee is about 8 people. And we typically get, 125 people submitting from all over the globe. It's really amazing where people come from. But there is some science and some art to how we pick, and we keep making it better every year. And I think Cece is the perfect example, Cindy, of someone that submitted, online, and it was a winner from the moment we saw it. And I think we'll let her tell that story about her talk, and it's a good example of what we really look for.
Yeah, her video was just, and this is something else we'll get into, but, part of the submissions process is submitting it. A video is not required, but in this day and age, it's a big miss if you do not submit a video with your TED submission. And that was what sealed the deal in Cece's case. I mean, everyone on the team, watched her video and we were sold. So, and again, we'll get into this as well, but the topic is, the theme of the event is important, but it's really about your idea worth spreading. It's something that is a bigger picture than you. So it's not your story. You can certainly weave your story into it, but it really is about an idea worth sharing, an idea worth spreading that hopefully has a bigger meaning, a bigger legacy to the world at large. So with that, Cece, do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your TEDx?
All right. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay. My name is Cece, and I applied to be a TEDx speaker. Don't judge me, but no great adventure ever starts with anyone eating a salad. Okay? So my girlfriend Cassie and I, we were down in the Keys trying to plan what we were going to do. So there was a lot of alcohol involved. And we did not know anything about TEDx. We figured we needed to volunteer so we could find out more about it. And so that's what started my process to being a TEDx speaker. I volunteered for 2 years, and I don't think anybody even realized. I mean, I didn't say anything. I just came in and stuffed envelopes and got to know the process, know what was happening behind the scenes. And so when I saw the theme in 2018, I was like, okay, I have a good idea of how to apply and what they're looking for. So that was my journey.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And your talk, we'll share that, but let's go around and everybody can introduce themselves a little bit, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into each of your talks and your theme. So Heather, let's toss it over to you. Share a little bit about your backgrounds and how the TEDx came to be. Everyone's, like I said, everyone's experience is very unique on the panel.
I'm Heather. I'm a former chief revenue officer from corporate America. I was fired 3 years ago, and I took that opportunity to write and self-publish my first book, start a speaking career, a podcast, and go to work for myself as an entrepreneur. During that time, I had the amazing opportunity to meet Cindy, who happened to be at one of my events, thank goodness. And I expressed to her, she said, you should be doing a TEDx talk. I said, I took a Google alert out on all TEDx speakers wanted. I've applied to 100 in the last year, and I'm declined for every single one. And to Eric's point, I was making it all about me. So I would write, I'm an amazing speaker. I've taken this stage. Me. It's sad because I'm a salesperson at heart. So I know always make it about the other person. But for some reason, I was fixated on getting this and wasn't thinking clearly. So Cindy helped me reposition, number one, figure out what the theme is for the event. Why are you connected to the theme? How do you add value to this theme? And why are you unique and different? And how can you support the event? Knowing that everybody's a volunteer there, what value can you add? What value can you deliver? So I really changed my position and my approach, thankfully, because of Cindy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of my passions is not just with TEDx, but I'm a marketing and PR person. So I love sharing people's stories. I'm a storyteller at heart. But again, it's not about, you can certainly weave your story in, which obviously each of you did weave your story into your TEDx. But it really is about the bigger picture of it. So I think that's very unique. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just my nature is that I went to Heather's book presentation in Miami. Like, she had an event where she spoke about her book. And I did not go with the intention of talking to her about TEDx. I went with the intention of learning about her story and learning more, because I'm very interested in learning about women and, women who are making things happen, and strong women, and inspiring women. So that's why I attended Heather's event. And interestingly, I also, and we'll get over to Christina, but I reached out, and I don't even know if Christina, you remember, but Christina wrote an article in Inc. magazine from a blogger that I followed. And years ago, I reached out to Christina. I didn't realize that she lived right in our backyard in South Florida. And then when I saw that she did, I do this a lot because I like to connect with people that I admire. And I reached out and I said, I read your article on this woman that I follow, and I thought it was great. And so that's how I initially connected with Christina, and she was a contact, and then I'll let her share with you how she got involved with TEDx.
Yeah, thanks.
You
yes.
You're a rock star as well.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Before I get into it, can we have anybody who's not talking mute their mic? Because some people in the comments are saying there's like buzzing and echoes and feedback. So I think that would be helpful. So Cindy and I connected, I think it was on LinkedIn back in the day, and we got to know each other, and I'm very active on social. So Cindy knew me and what I did. and she introduced me to Eric, and we had a meeting, and we talked about, we didn't have like the main idea. It was about media and it was about news, but we were like, let's figure out like an idea that we could come up with. And I came up with an idea. Well, like, you used to have to, traditionally go to college and get a degree and get a job and work your way up to be successful. And now you can just be like super cool on YouTube and you could be successful. I was like, we could talk about that. And Eric was like, what about fake news? And I was like, all right, that's like a trigger word, a trigger phrase, but let's go with that. And it wasn't political. Like, I know people think it's political. It can be political, but it's not political. And it's funny because everybody was talking about this documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll watch it. 2 hours long. I was so bored. And then I realized why. And I texted Eric and I'm like, Eric, have you seen this show everybody's talking about, The Social Dilemma on Netflix? It's basically my 7-minute TEDx talk spread out over 2 hours, 2 years after I did my TEDx talk. So the title is Fake News, It's Your Fault. And as you saw in The Social Dilemma, if you watch that, it's your fault. It's you believing everything you see on the internet and you sharing it without really knowing what you're sharing. And it was really a collaboration of like, you have good experience and you have a lot to say about this. So let's figure it out and make it relevant today. And that's what we did. But Cindy, you do have to unmute yourself when you talk.
Okay, sorry. I shut my video off. So I wanted to share a little bit about the preparation process. First, I'll hand it over to Eric just to share a little bit about what we do from a leadership perspective, an organizer perspective at TEDx Boca Raton. Because I don't think every TEDx does this, but we do have a coach that we bring on board to work with the speakers. So, and then if each of you could share your experience as far as the preparation, because obviously the preparation is so critical to making it successful. And, each of you happens to be very naturally has a stage presence. Let's just put it that way. And obviously, I mean, Heather was in media, Christina was in media, and Cece is just a rock star on stage. So yeah, I just feel like each of you had a competitive edge there. However, I know that you also put blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes when you're prepping for a TEDx, because it's a big deal, obviously. So Eric, do you want to share a little bit about what we do from an organizer's perspective?
Yeah, so I would say being an organizer, it's like sticking up a pencil in your eye every day. It's not a fun process. These events cost, easily 6 figures to do. We've never done an event under 1,000 people. It requires 100 volunteers. It requires raising a lot of money.
A lot of begging.
Yeah, a lot of begging. You live and die by your team. So, I tend to go to people I know and I'm really comfortable with, and we've had pretty much the same core team, for the last 3 years, even though not much is going on right now. So you live and die by the team because, and pretty much if someone's not rowing, they get voted off the island. So there's no one kind of sitting around directing. Everyone has a very unique and distinct role. I think when it, again, we talked a little bit about, how we choose speakers. What else, Cindy, did you want me to talk about? I had something in mind and I lost. Oh yeah, I know, with speakers. One of the things we do is, even if you're applying or you've been chosen, we will give you some resources. There are not necessarily, there are more guidelines on how to do a really good TED Talk. And I think one of the, she's associated with TED, her name is June Cohen, Cohen. And she does a great talk on how to deliver a great TED Talk. She's someone, it's, probably 12 or 15 minutes, but really gets to the heart of, how to deliver a great TED Talk. So we'll generally give those resources out well in advance. But you can find, a lot of those people tied to TED. There's another one, Nancy Duarte, Duarte, and she does another one. another really good talk on giving a TED talk. So those are the two best resources that I generally send people to. And then TED provides a PDF of basic guidelines. So we give you a document with those 3 resources. And we do have a speaker coach, and the speaker coach generally tends to spend 3 or more sessions with each speaker to help them really refine and narrow their pitch. So it's TED appropriate. So we definitely try to give as much assistance as we can. For a small organization, I think we do a pretty good job overall. Anything else?
Yeah, and I was just going to throw in there, Eric, and this is something to Heather's point that she was mentioning before. There are so many incredibly talented speakers that submit to us, but it really isn't, number one, it's not about being a speaker. It really is about giving people a voice that may not have a voice, that has something valuable to say. So the guidelines are incredibly important. And that's another thing with us. I mean, I can't speak for every other organization, but we really follow the guidelines. And if it's something that, again, is self-promotional or doesn't follow the guidelines, then it sort of gets pushed to the wayside, unfortunately, because sometimes they're really great potential candidates, but we have to go by TED's guidelines. It's not even our own guidelines. We really are strict about following the TED guidelines. So I would just recommend that if you are looking to be a TEDx speaker or TED speaker, that you do, and we can make those available. You can follow up with us, whether it's on LinkedIn, Eric and I, and we can give you those links. So, Eric, did you want to say anything else? And then we'll ask the ladies.
No, I think it's kind of a good overview. I think you make a very good point. And I think that when it comes to doing an event, TED has a very big laundry list of restrictions and guidelines, and we do follow those. And I'd probably say that we've broken a few rules, not on purpose. And TED lets you know when you broke some rules. They're pretty much very on top of what's going on, whether it's social media or the talks themselves. So we try very hard not to break rules because we want to maintain the ability to do these events. So, we generally, when we give these guidelines, they're not necessarily our guidelines. We're really just following what TED recommends. I think that's a good overview, Cindy. Yeah.
And then, Joy, did you want to, just as far as like your perspective, I know you had a lot of questions when we were going into it too, because you, like many of the people that are attending tonight, it's on your bucket list to do a TED Talk.
Sure. I guess one of my questions is, especially to each one of you, how much was it you already had a topic going in? And then how much was it that, that Cindy and Eric would help guide and change the topic? Christine, I know initially you had a different idea and they kind of guided you. I just want to know, how much did it actually stay close to what you were thinking? And then did the coaches help kind of change your topics?
For me, we started with the fake news, but it was like, okay, like, what are you going to say? Like, I had 7 minutes and I was like, well, what am I going to say about fake news? And then working with the speaker coach was helpful. She was the one who came up with the idea to have the share before you care sentiment dropped in after I would make a point, like, here are 3 points. And after each point, say share before you care. And as a TV reporter, something that I always try to do in every story was start a story the same way that you would end a story. So I started, and this again was help with her, is I wanted to give specific examples that people could relate to. So I started with a specific story of a reporter friend of mine who was accused of doing something she didn't do, and it went crazy on Twitter. And then I kind of ended with what could have happened to her because of that. And then obviously you got to throw the Kardashians in there because we're talking about people posting on social. So it was a mixture because of my topic. It was a mixture of my experience and what I've been through or colleagues in the news industry have been through. It was a mixture of just like pop culture and what people were doing in the comments and sharing, and even, you know, how TV ratings work. Like, you control what you see. And then it was a mixture of just staying on top of like that topic and what was happening in the world. Because if something happened as far as, you know, sharing misinformation, I mean, at the time, Twitter didn't have what it has now. Like, currently you have a lot of the this is, you know, not real about the election, or this is being disputed, whatever their wording is. They didn't have that at the time, which now it's like, whatever, people believe what they want to believe no matter what. I mean, it could be a whole other talk about fake news this year. But it was a mixture of a lot of things. I will say, working with the speaking coach, it did make a huge difference. From like start to finish, my talk changed a lot in working with her.
Stacey, do you want to jump in?
Oh, yes. Let me tell you what I originally sent in saying that I was going to speak about. My final speech was totally different. Totally different. My coach was from the Midwest. And so when I gave facts and figures, you know, about the Black and the brown communities, and she was like, that's not true. And what I realized is that my talk was going to be bigger than South Florida. It was going to go national. And so I had to make it universal and put in things like, you know, 1 out of every 4 Americans or 1 out of every 3 Americans has had the issue, you know, that I was talking about. But I will tell you this, the funniest part for me, I could not figure out the name of my speech. And I called it something like How to Make Lemonade. And I'll never forget, we were doing some promotional event. I said the name of my speech. You could have heard a pin drop in Kansas. And we are here in South Florida. And Cindy sent me an email like within hours. And she's like, Cece, we have got to change the name. And that's how we came up with Everyone Gets a Second Chance. Because before it was something about lemonade, totally wrong for what I was going to speak about. So for me, having a coach and having Cindy just guide me through the process and make my speech more universal was definitely beneficial. Definitely.
Yeah. And then Heather, for you, I know you already were probably going with the confidence, but how did it change? Even did it change some, you know, or the approach or the opening, or how did yours shift and change a little bit from when you started initially?
Yeah, mine wasn't actually going with confidence. The initial concept I applied with was C student to the C-suite, which is essentially around the idea that, one, I was an average student and I made it, you know, into publicly traded company as a chief revenue officer. However, there was also a lot of data when I researched it that most C-suite executives were not those A+, you know, perfect students, and why that is around creativity, innovation, et cetera, leadership. So that was the idea that they brought me in on. And then those two right there at the it was like 5 weeks before, they messaged me and they're like, you can do better than this. You're not digging deep enough. Get grittier. And I called Cindy like, what? Are you freaking kidding me? Because I had a really busy work calendar right up into the event. I'm like, I don't know who you're kidding. How am I going to do a new talk? This one's ready. It's like in the can and ready to go. She's like, yeah, we're blowing that one up. Let's brainstorm. So you and I sat on a Saturday on the phone and we just kept throwing out ideas, like just brainstorming. And she said, okay, let's disconnect now. Take 2 days. You come up with your favorite 2 or 3. I'm going to come up with my favorite 2 or 3 from this brainstorming session. And we regrouped and we agreed on this idea of, you know, really what happened when I got fired from the C-suite, and really that bigger conversation, which is about women sabotaging women in corporate America that no one's really talking about, instead of just men, you know, harassing women. What about the women harassers that are out there? And so that morphed into my current talk today.
Gotcha. Cindy, I think
you're muted.
I would just add to that that's topic was so relevant, like the Me Too movement, and it was such a twist on it. And similarly with Christina's, and her title is still so relevant right now too, and it's provocative, and people are curious because, and also it takes, and with Heather and Christina, it takes you through a twist, and Cece as well. So I think that's something to really think about. And Cece, why don't you share a little bit about your talk? It's fascinating for those people who haven't, your story, and everybody else. I know everyone's given us a little bit of a snapshot of their story, but yeah.
My story is that I am a former U.S. Marine, and I got in trouble.
For your service.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a former U.S. Marine, and I made some bad decisions, and so ended up in prison and spent almost a year in solitary confinement. And so my talk starts about when I left prison, and it was April Fool's, and that whole thing of thinking that they were playing a trick on me, and my mindset of decided not to go back, and the things that I did, and that it absolutely is possible that when you make a mistake, no matter what it is in life, whether it's divorce or, getting fired or anything like that, what do you do to bounce back? So yeah, that was kind of my speech.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So I just feel like there's so much value and so many nuggets in the topics. And again, I would just also recommend, a lot of the people here are speakers, and it really is, a TED Talk is not a speech. It really isn't.
Sure,
it's a very unique presentation. And again, just going back to an idea worth spreading, that, that is very thoughtful and strategic, I would say. So just as far as, I know we talked about everybody sharing some takeaways and some tips. And then I would love to just, from your own experience, like if somebody is, our viewers that are watching, like what would you share with them from your experience that could help them if they're interested in either getting on stage to be a TED speaker, or, and then I'll hand it over to Eric too, from an organizer's perspective. We'll go around and ask everyone, because obviously you, Eric, have a lot of insight about that too. So, so do you want to take that to start, Eric? Oh, you're muted. Mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You said talk from a speaker perspective?
No, I was saying from a organizer's perspective, because we have people that are viewers that probably want to do a TED Talk, but then there's other viewers that might want to think about being an organizer or getting involved from an organizer's perspective. So since that's your expertise, maybe share that, and then we'll ask the ladies to share their tips on if you want to do a TED Talk. Here's 3 things that I think would really be beneficial going in.
Yeah, so there's certainly, like I said, I think there's some truth if you decide to become an organizer and you apply for the license, and the license is free, but it is difficult to get. They really put you through your paces. You will be put on an anxiety installment plan until the event ends, because it's not just the speakers, that's the heart of the event, but there's the logistics of the event. And that can be very harrowing. I don't regret. It's been a great experience, and that's why we continue to do it. But it's definitely not easy. And you live and die by the team. I think in terms of the speakers, that is probably the most complicated part of the event. We really try to balance gender and race and age, and I don't hide from it. I'm upfront about it. We tend to, I think, skew towards women. In truth, we it's either split male female, or I think last year we had one more female than male. But again, we do look for a healthy balance. And it definitely, I think, makes for a better diverse event. And I think if you're going to organize, I do think you need to keep that top of mind, and it can be tricky. And again, I don't hide from it, but it is a fulfilling experience. The first one is certainly a labor of love, and tricky and difficult. And then, the second one, you continue to build off of your mistakes and make it better. But it's a worthwhile venture, but really very, very difficult and tough. You're on mute, Cindy. Hey, Cindy, you're on mute.
Oh. Now, can you hear me? Okay, sorry. No, I was going to say, just agree. It's a labor of love. And there's just so many moving parts. And even the day of the event, like our texts, our phones are blowing up and people are needing things at the last minute. And we're trying to, put everything together and all the moving parts. But it always comes together, and it's so far we actually had 3 TEDx Salon events too that were all sold out and very, very successful events. So I'd love to hear from the panelists, the TEDx speakers, on their, just some tips that you can give to attendees, viewers that are interested in getting a TED Talk from your experience.
Before y'all start too, along the lines of what you just asked, Cindy, I kind of want you guys to take us through, I've heard Heather on her podcast talk about, the day of and actually getting the courage to go out there on stage. And I know there's so much anxiety and you're having to jump through a lot of fear. So I would love for y'all to touch on that too, how you dug deep and how you really just walked out there with confidence. Because, the TED Talk's a pretty big deal. So I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety before you actually walk out on that stage.
Yeah, and I just want to say, think about it. It's a legacy piece that lives on forever online. And it's like, I don't say you get one shot, because there are people that have more than one TED Talk, but it is something that you want to give it your best shot, because you definitely, you don't know if you're going to get another opportunity. So Heather, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I had a funny situation. I'd spoken for 20 years and I don't get nervous when I speak. However, having a very short talk, a 10-minute talk where you're stuck on this red dot, there's all of, these outside opinions on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and I worked harder on this speech than any other of my life. So definitely the pressure was high. And I have a routine for speaking, for any speech. I have a playlist that I listen to. I have scents that I smell. I smell lavender. Like, I get myself trained in a routine like Pavlov's dog that, I am ready to go kill something. I'm going to go do amazing. And I'm either in red or blue if I'm nervous. Like, I have a whole thing I do. So if I don't do that whole thing, I'm not really prepped. Well, the morning of your TEDx talk, I did not know this, you will go to the arena and Eric, who is the boss, will tell people what to do. And I'm in my sweatpants with my eye patches on, walking around, like whatever I'm doing on my phone, oblivious, just thinking I have to show up there. And Eric says on his mic of God, Heather, get on stage, please. And so I jump up on stage like, oh, they just want to see, how I walk around the red circle. No. So he says, start your talk. And I was not ready. And I have my little routine. I just told you, I hadn't done my routine. And so I wasn't ready, but I thought, okay, just go. And I went, and 1 minute in, I froze. And Eric thought I was kidding, and I wasn't kidding. And I've never in my whole life frozen on a stage ever. And I froze, and no words came to me. Everything went blank, like a black piece of paper, and I couldn't remember anything. And I just stopped, and he started laughing on his God headset and said, oh, that's okay. All right, get down. Mic is good. We're good. Okay, guys, proceed with whatever he tells you to do next. And I got off the stage, and someone said something very negative to me. And in that moment, I snapped. and I said, I knew for myself, and everyone has to do what works for them. But for me, like, I have my routine and I know my routine. So I wanted to go right to my routine and get out of that negative situation. So I got myself around people that support me and love me. And I put a bubble around, I wouldn't speak to anybody else until I actually went on stage for the real time a couple hours later. I put my blue power color on. I sniffed my lavender. I read my notes. I listened to my playlist. Like, I did all of my weird things that I do that make me feel comfortable and confident. And I went, and I remember we were in, Cindy had a lot of our advertisers, supporters, sponsors there, and they want to talk to you. And I was like, no, and I just kept saying, I wouldn't even say hello, nothing. Super rude, not my style. But I knew if I didn't stay in this little bubble I just created, I might blow it again. And like Cindy said, if you go out there and you blow it on a TEDx talk, that's with you forever, right? And I have enough haters. Like, listen, I don't need this thing going viral because I blew it, right? I wanted it going viral because it was great. So I thought to myself, okay, just like stay in your bubble, stay in your bubble. I'm sure I pissed people off. Then, P.S., when you go down to go on stage and you're backstage ready to get mic'd up and go on, people are freaking out. Now, professional speakers aren't like this, guys. So I want everyone to know, get ready for everything you didn't think will happen. Some man back there, no names will be named, that was coming up after me, was doing push-ups, sweating, screaming backstage. And I had spoken for a long time, I never saw anything like this. People were running around in circles. I'm like, this is crazy back here. Like, it's coming off the rails. This is not good. In my mind, I'm thinking this. I'm like, I already blanked out once. Now these people are like barnyard animals back here. This is horrible. But I kept going, like, go back in your mind, go back in your mind. And thank goodness one of our volunteers saw my face when I saw this guy freaking out. And she walked up to me with lavender right in my face. She's like, sniff this right now. And I did. And lucky for me, that's one of my things that puts me into my I'm about to go kill a speech mode. And she helped me, and she stuck it on my nose so I could smell it. And then they said, Heather, you're on. And my heart was racing like anxiety. I had never had to speak before. And I knew you can't blank out there. You can't blank. And so I closed my eyes. I'll never forget. And I said, if you don't walk out there right now, you will never forgive yourself. If you walk out there and blows this thing and forget every word, I'm going to be so proud of you. Just go. And I don't remember anything else. I just walked out. I took all the pressure off myself. Even if I blow it, I was ballsy enough to walk out there on that little tiny red circle. And I don't remember the first 2 minutes of that talk at all. And when I watch it on replay now, I can see there's a moment where I become regular me. And there was that moment that I was like in this weird alternate, other people don't really know it, but I know it. And if you now go look, you'll see I shift back to like regular me. I was so scared of blowing it like I did that morning that I just went into this like weird, I don't even know. I trained so much for it that something else inside me took over. Thank goodness. And it all worked out in the end.
Well, I just want to add to that, our event, there's over 1,000 people in the audience. It is like, even if you are a seasoned keynote speaker, it's very intimidating. And the fact that that it's going to be, a legacy piece for you, hopefully, where you can, it'll live on. There's a tremendous amount of pressure. So, Christina, do you want to share?
Yeah. So with me, it was a little different, and everybody thought, oh, you'll be good. You're used to being on TV. Talking to a camera is very different than talking to 1,000 people. So it wasn't like I've spoken at events, but it was just like business events to like 20 people, never over 1,000. I think there were like 1,200 there in 2018.
Yeah. Over 1,200. Yep.
Yeah. So for me, the way I prepared up until that event was I just did the talk like 3 times a day. And this is where I think being on TV did help me. I learned that when you are live, you cannot memorize what you're going to say word for word, especially when you're going to be talking for 7-10 minutes, because if you mess up one word, then you're screwed for the rest. It messes with your mind. So I knew what I was going to say. I knew the content, and I actually used my slides as bullet points. So when I'm a reporter in the field, I have my notepad, I have my bullet points. So I know what I want to say in what order. I used my slides for that. So I would kind of glance at it. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I got to talk about Kim and Chloe and what people are saying about them online, because my slides were like my reminder. So that's how I prepared. And when it came to being nervous, I was kind of nervous up until the event, like, because you're thinking like, oh my gosh, you're talking to a bunch of people. If you mess up, you can't stop and start over. The only time you stop and start over is if there's like a technical problem. And you don't even know about that. Somebody will literally come up on stage and walk in front of you and be like, nope, you got to stop and start over. So if you mess up, you can't stop and start over. So you're thinking of all the people, you can't mess up, and for me, what changed the nervousness to excitement was when the speaking coach said, you've practiced for this, just go have fun. And it really was like that mental, like mind shift where it's like, instead of being nervous about this, I'm just going to be excited. Like, what a cool opportunity. So I'm just going to be excited and I'm just going to go have fun, because at that point, there's nothing more you can do. Like, you wrote the damn thing, you practiced it, like, just go and do it. And you might as well have fun with it instead of being nervous about it. So that was my mindset. So even when I walked out there, your heart races a little bit, but then once you get started, like Heather said, like once you get started and you turn into like, oh, it's me, I'm just doing my thing, it's different. And I think it was just switching from I'm nervous to I'm excited. That was really helpful.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it is about mindset. A lot of it is just that. And I know Heather can speak to this because that's what your book's about, confidence creator. So,
Hey, Cindy, I just have a question. Christine, I know that you went first in 2018 and there's a reason why you went first. Heather, did you go first in 2019? Yeah. So there's a reason why the two of you went first, because we had the most confidence in you. So, that's the reason. Yeah.
Wait. I was all the way at the back.
No, there's a reason.
Strategic about that.
Yeah, CC. Yeah. So with you, you were in the second half, and we bet you a weak speaker went before you, and we knew you had such a strong talk that if someone really bombed, that you would recover for us.
Oh, okay.
So that's how it happened. But with Heather, and I remember the scenarios, but with Heather, but there was never any doubt that you wouldn't do a really good talk. It's important, I think, for people to, and that's why we go through a run through in the beginning. So you can screw it up and then you have a couple hours to get your mind together, because then you're going to do it well. And that's why we go through those run-throughs the way we do. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have to tell you this, that talking about going through run-throughs. So Christina and I were in the makeup room and we're getting prepared. And we had been through the run-through on stage, and I had all my friends wearing blue. I told everybody on social media, if you're coming, wear blue. This way I can see you. I'll know, that you're there for me. I had on a blue shirt, my favorite shirt, and it fit me really nicely in the front. But as I was getting dressed in the room, Christina and I are back there with some others, and I turned to walk out, and they're like, no, like, you cannot wear that on stage, because if you turn to walk out, off the stage, it just didn't fit right. And so I had a change of clothes. So my advice is bring a couple outfits, definitely. And so I put on a red dress, and Christina looks at me and she goes, oh no, you need something around your neck. And so she gave me her choker. It was like an aquamarine choker. And all I could think of was make sure I find her afterwards to give it back. And so for that, I was so thankful. And my advice to anybody who's going to be a speaker, have fun, relax. Everybody wants you to do well, and nobody wants to say, have another speaker do badly. We all want to look good. So that would be my thing. And definitely have your playlist because, yes, I was off to the side and I was listening to this song. And I know that when I walked out on stage, I felt like Superwoman. You know, I just knew that I had it. And I made a joke about being a playmate, which is so not true. It's not my personality. I'm short. I never would have been a playmate. But because I had changed from pants and a shirt into a dress, that when I did that playmates joke, I mean, I just bobbed my head and I felt like Dolly Parton out there. And I knew at that point that I had nailed it. So, but Heather, there is one part in my speech later on where I forgot everything. And every time I look at my talk, I'm like, yep, that's where I lost track. And I just had to think and like, okay, just come back to center. So that was
something about forgetting. Nobody knows you forgot. Nobody knows you messed up. Like nobody else knows your talk. So you could fill it in with whatever and nobody knows any better because they don't know what you were going to say anyway.
Right. But, I'll be forever grateful for you, Christina, because, the internet and YouTube is forever. Make sure whatever you're going to wear, you look good in it, you feel good, because there is no change in that. And I would have hated life had I worn that blue shirt. So, yes.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing, that we do when we're looking at the speakers and the topics is that, I just am thinking of sound bites from each of your talks, and so much of it was so relevant. I know, Cece, when you spoke, and I don't want to get the statistic wrong, but you brought people into your talk, and Heather and Christina did the same thing. And I think that's so powerful. Like you said, something like look to your right and look to your left, and one in 3 people has been incarcerated, right? Was that what it was? Something
Actually, I said look to your left, look to your right. One of the 3 of you has ridden in the back of a police car.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But again, you're bringing in the audience into your conversation, your talk. There were so many parts of Heather's and Christina's that people can relate to, and not just as women, because like Eric said, we're pretty very thoughtful and strategic about curating the speaker lineup so we have a great balance. And we didn't really talk about this, but Eric, I always tease him and say I'm his wing girl because of his background. We didn't really talk about it, but Eric is, a startup entrepreneur, an ex-IBMer, and his first company was acquired by Constant Contact. He has an MBA from MIT. So he's very connected with a lot of colleagues from MIT, and we've been really fortunate to have some incredible thought leaders speaking. But I would say that even the people that are thought leaders and very seasoned speakers, when you get up there and you are talking in front of over 1,000 people, I mean, it was a sea of people in that auditorium. And there were a couple speakers, not you ladies, but there were a couple speakers that for a minute there was like a little, when you're watching a presentation and you feel nervous. So I think everyone needs to mute for a moment to hear some tapping. But yeah, I think that's something too that I don't think people realize how challenging that can be. And maybe Eric, you could share a little bit about some of the other speakers and colleagues that you've invited, because that to have a balance, not just of genres and age groups, but topics are so important too. We want them to be relevant. We want it to be an idea worth spreading. We want it to be, just make sure that we really have a nice balance.
Yeah, so we'll come up with the theme for the event. And the idea is that a speaker, you'll have an idea and you have to weave the theme into your talk. And if you can't weave the theme into your talk, that's, you know, certainly one way that you'll get voted off the island. So you could think of it as a theme, and then there's a series of topics, and then those series of topics will have ideas. Like a good example is climate change. You know, we did one on running water, and there was another idea under the topic of climate change. So I think what Christina talked about is we look to cover the hot topics of the day, regardless of what the theme is. And, you know, fake news was a hot topic. So we try to get ahead of some of these things. Heather's talk was really timely because I had experienced this a lot working in tech. My experiences is that men weren't holding women back in tech. It was women that were holding women back in tech. And that was my observation, also being a manager. And I thought that her talk was very timely. And then with Cece, it was just a great story of a tragic experience that she turned, you know, into helping other people be better. And it's a great story. And I think we look, you know, I do go into my network at MIT, and we'll get a few people. And like last year, one of the professors, what she does, and she's at MIT in Cambridge, and her entire field of science is, you know, little satellites that study hurricanes in the Atlantic, right? Could that be more relevant to people in South Florida, right? So we will look for topics that are very relevant to, you know, to the audience that we serve. And let's be honest, it can be difficult to serve a Boca Raton audience in terms of topics. So we do work pretty hard to find things that are relevant. So it's one of the tougher jobs, is really getting a right mix of ideas that fit under these topics, that fit underneath the theme.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think at this point I was hoping that we could open it up for questions. There's a chat feature, and Joy, I muted you, but can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
There you go. There was static in the background. So does anybody have questions in the audience, in the chat section? Please share. And
Cindy, there's already 2 questions up. One says, Heather mentioned she applied to 100 plus, but got the spot when you guys crossed paths. What percentage of speakers do you find versus choose through the application? For those of us applying, what makes an application stand out to you?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Eric, you want to start with that?
Right. So I would say that we curate, meaning we go and find probably about half the speakers, and 50 to 60%. And then the other half, you know, will come through the submission. And the best way to get your idea across, I think, is, Cindy mentioned, is if you do a video. Oftentimes, you know, text in the forum doesn't come through. You know, your spirit doesn't come through. When Cece submitted her video, she had a quality about her that came through. That was everyone. We were 100%. It was a lock the moment we saw her video. So if you can submit a video, that's helpful. Clearly, again, if you start to promote yourself and it's tied to a business, you knock yourself out of the box right away. It's an easy one. You have to have an idea worth spreading, again, that matches, that is weaved into the theme of what we're talking about. If you don't weave your idea into the theme, you get knocked out. I think with Christina, we worked with her because I felt inherently there was something really, really there. And sometimes you just have to talk about it a couple times. And I think eventually, Christine, you would agree. We're like, oh, here's the topic. It's fake news.
Yeah.
It's timely. It weaved into the theme of that year. So again, I think it's the topic that meets the theme, that's not self-promotional, that, you know, doesn't sort of have a religious overtone or politics. And, you know, you don't, if you're trying to be the next Tony Robbins, that's not what we're looking for. Where, you know, Tony Robbins already exists. You know, we want new ideas. That's the goal, is, ideas we're spreading. And it doesn't have to be a new idea. It can be an old idea and a fresh perspective on an old idea. Those are great. So I think that sometimes can be easier to get to than a new idea. But we certainly look for new ideas. That's always top of mind for us.
Yeah, and we've been so fortunate with Eric's network too, from out of town. But we had a woman, a 27-year-old from getting her PhD in aerospace engineering, who worked for Facebook's connectivity lab, and she gave an incredible talk. Do you want to speak to that really quick, Eric? And then Eric has a friend from MIT that invented Guitar Hero and Skylanders, and he spoke about the importance of failing. From an entrepreneurial perspective. We had another colleague who spoke about preparing to get fired, and she's an employment attorney. And that was so relevant too, about, you are your own brand. And especially in this day and age, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And I think, Heather, you had a perfect experience with that too, where you're branding a company and not necessarily yourself. And then you have to reinvent yourself when you leave.
Yeah, I think the first speaker, Rochelle, she was finishing her PhD in aerospace engineering, and she was working for the Facebook Connectivity Lab, which was all about bringing internet to remote places on the planet. And that's a big, hefty goal. And Facebook was putting a lot of money into it. And she had a particular technology and approach, and it was just a really good talk. The other guy that I went to school with, Kartik, he and his brother Guha had created Guitar Hero. And then their next thing was Skylanders, which was even a bigger franchise. And they just came out with their third big thing called Mario Kart Live. So if you know Mario, the game, they came out with the coolest racing game I've ever seen. It's just wild how creative this guy is. He gave a talk on what it's like to fail, because we all know all of his big successes, but never talk about his failures. And he freely admitted, he had so many more failures than just, these, at the time, these two big successes. And then I think with Patty, Patty Sigmund, who's an employment attorney in Orlando, she had a new idea. No one had talked about getting prepared to be fired. It's a really brilliant idea. And what was amazing about her talk is the way she started her talk. Her talk started as she came onto the stage, and she was holding a box, that banker's box, and pretended that she was just getting fired, and was talking to herself about how upset she was about getting fired. And then she went into her talk as an employment attorney about how to be prepared, to getting fired, because most of her clients had no idea they were going to get fired, had been, at a job for 20 or 30 years, and they had mixed all their personal and professional lives into their job. And now they got fired, and there's no way to pull it apart once you get fired. So she had a brilliant talk. And I think that's a great example of a new topic. And when we get new topics, we basically go on TED.com and we'll search. I'd done a couple searches like getting fired, and no one had done a talk. So that's a good example of a new idea.
And one thing I just want to mention too is that, with the TED organizers, nobody gets paid. The speakers don't get paid. The organizers don't get paid. The team doesn't get paid. It's all about, curating partnerships to support this initiative and help fund it. And again, for the speakers, hopefully it's a credential and obviously a worthwhile initiative. But it's probably the hardest thing you work for that you don't get paid for, right?
Well, Cindy, props to you, and you too, Eric. Like, Cindy, I think I told you 100 times, like, how are you doing this? Like, the amount of work that you two did during that time, it's like unfathomable. Like, it's crazy how much work you did, period. Even if you were getting paid for it, like, it was excessive. It really was.
Oh, thank you. Well, we love it. We do. And yeah, we really do. And the other amazing thing is it just connects us. I mean, passionate about helping to, you know, get important messages out. And I feel like, you know, if there's any, you know, thing that I enjoy, one of the most important things I enjoy about that is if there's a little part I play in that. But again, with my background in PR too, I'm passionate about that with women curating topics, getting people, you know, in the media to share their stories. So, and you too, Christina, that's what you do. So, but thank you. And Eric, yeah, we're lucky. We have a really, really great team, but it is definitely a labor of love. Are there any other questions? Because I'd love to share, to, you know, answer questions while people are here.
Somebody is wondering.
Yeah, I
if
see
the
one about the
theme-
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we actually, before COVID, we did have a theme, and we've changed it because of COVID and the upcoming event. I don't know, Cindy, do we want to talk a little bit about what we're thinking about for 2021?
Yeah, I think it would be great. I mean, this is still very fluid, 2021. But yeah, Eric put the teaser out. It's exciting.
Yeah, so potentially we're going to do the first true VR event, virtual reality. It will be a vastly smaller event because everyone who attends would acquire acquire the goggles. It'll probably be 4 to 6 speakers. We did go to TED and say, want to try this? And they were like, okay, you know, there's a lot of discovery for us. And we're trying to work through the logistics of it. So it's going to be something unique. And I don't think, Cindy, we're actually clear in what the theme is. Like I said, we had a theme in doing a traditional, you know, TED Talk, but now it's sort of evolved. So we're trying to work through the details. But so for the people that, you know, would be watching the goggles, they would have a virtual reality experience. And then the video itself, while it would be in 2D, it should be interesting. You know, it won't be as interesting as if you have the goggles on, but, you know, we still have, you know, we still have to produce videos, and the videos hopefully will be interesting. You know, you can do some great stuff in 2D. So it's something new, and we're going to give it a shot. I think we're trying to give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So we initially, our theme for 2020 before COVID hit was going to be defining moments. And our event typically is in October or November. But obviously it was kind of a moving target this year. We were hoping that, you know, obviously we didn't know where things would be at this stage with COVID. And we kept hoping and pushing the date. And so now it looks like we are really excited. It will probably be just 4 speakers versus our normal 14 speakers that we have, and practically a full day event. It will be probably just a 2-hour event with the headsets on, the Oculus. But, you know, Eric and I are also working on getting the TED Women's license. So that could be a 2021 initiative too. That, yeah, Cece's excited about that. So yeah, that could be a 2021 initiative that's not in the VR space. And then, you know, last year we had 3 TEDx Salon events. So, you know, everything's still on the table for 2021, but we are moving in the direction of, like Eric said, doing this VR event, and we're really excited about it. And again, it's not, you know, there's a lot of, you know, unknowns still, and it's like working in you know, the VR experience inside is incredible. It's just taking that and making it live on is going to be a little bit more of a challenge for the speakers that give the presentations inside the VR world. So, but we just think it makes sense. Like the timing makes sense with moving in that direction. So hopefully it'll come together, and we're hoping to have it in the first quarter. But typically, just so everyone knows, typically we do post, you know, that speaker submissions is open. Normally we do it like 6 months in advance, so people know. but with everything going on, we just haven't been able to, get our arms around exactly when we're going to be hosting the event, because it's like a moving target with what's going on with the restrictions. I know Boca has a lot of restrictions with events. We were going to have the event this year at Meisner Park at the amphitheater outdoors to try to accommodate, social distancing and germs, etc. But then, there's guidelines now with outdoor events, and we certainly can't have an event with 1,000 people. So that's why we're sort of getting creative. Yeah. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I know. Joy, did you have a question?
You're on mute, Joy.
Is it just me, or were we sounding like robots some of the time?
There you go. Okay, you're all there.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
No, besides that, I mean, those were great. I would just say, how out of the three of you, did you work with any other additional speaking coaches outside of what was provided for the TEDx? Like, which ones of you had an outside speaker coach, and which one of you just kind of worked on your own? I'll start with you, Cece. You want to answer that?
So I actually am a Toastmaster.
Oh, okay.
And so the club I belong to, which is Pembroke Pines Toastmasters, those guys were great. Those members were fantastic. They listened to that speech so many times that I was embarrassed to give it, but they just kept hammering me, Cece, don't say don't say just go up there, and we just refined my speech. So yes, I had additional help beside the coaches. Yes.
And that is a good point, by the way. You don't want to just, when you're practicing a talk, you don't want to just stand in front of your mirror. You want to get in front of strangers. You want to get in front of people you don't know. You need to put yourself in uncomfortable positions to give your talk, because when you get on that stage, you just don't know what's going to happen. And so the more time you put in, the more uncomfortable positions you put yourself in, the more better prepared you are the moment you step into the red round dot.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So I will say this, there is such a big difference between, and I've been a Toastmaster for a number of years, there was such a difference between giving a speech, a Toastmaster speech, and doing a TEDx talk. Two totally different things. And I am a photographer. I went to school for video and TV production. But stepping onto that red dot and knowing that 8 cameras were looking at me, I mean, I was sweating in parts unknown. I really was. It was just unbelievable, because everything you do can be picked up by one or more cameras. And like I said, that stuff lasts forever. So yeah, that was pretty nerve-wracking, but definitely I had a lot of help in preparing my speech. Yes. We can't hear you, Cindy.
Oh, I was going to say, does Heather and Christina want to jump in and just speak to that briefly?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I didn't have a strong connection with a speaker coach, so I hired a speaker coach local so that I could get up on a stage locally and just go through the talk a few times. That felt important to me. I mean, some people might not feel like that, but I wanted to be on a stage with someone that was sitting in front of me live to give me that feedback. So that was helpful. And then I'm also a big fan of don't take direction from people who haven't been where you're going to go. So I reached out to Amy Morin, who has one of the top TEDx talks out there. I knew her previously, and I sent her my talk, and immediately she came back to me and she's like, your beginning's not good enough. She's like, get better, go back and work hard. Well, she said it much nicer than that, but she was like, listen, you're better than this, make the talk better than this. And once I knew she has 30 million views, I was like, if she feels this can be better, I'm rewriting this thing. And I just kept working on it. until, I felt it was good enough.
I did not work with anybody outside. I just worked with the coach that TEDx provided. But I do want to echo Heather's point. Like, don't take advice from people who have not been there, done that. I mean, not just TEDx, but I think anything in life, because today everybody's got an opinion, and, so many people will share it with you. And it's like, what is your opinion based off of? Is it based off of your experience? Is it based off of facts? Like, where's this coming from? So, but to answer your question, Joy, I worked with the TEDx coach.
Yeah. And I would just add that, this particular group, every single one of you has a speaking background, but there are plenty of speakers for TEDx Boca Raton that don't. So I personally would encourage people, the more coaching you can get, and like everyone's reiterated, I mean, I wouldn't ask a coach to coach me if they don't have any specific experience with what type of talk you're doing, and hopefully something related to TEDx or TED. And I know Margaret had asked about, how do we, and Christina answered this in the notes here, but in the chat section, but how do you handle speakers who are from out of town as far as working with the coach and other facets of the production? And, we do have, like Eric was saying, about half of our speakers come from out of state. So, and again, most of the time we have about 14 speakers. So that's 7 people coming from out of state that fly in, stay, but they are on Zoom, practicing with their coach, and then doing things on their own, obviously, and maybe like a Heather hiring someone independently, but depending upon your level, your comfort level, and your time commitment, I think it's really up to you, but to hone it again and again, obviously, is only going to give you a better result. Is there any other, I'm trying to see if there's any other questions that I missed.
I haven't seen any other questions.
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone to, if it's okay with everyone on the panel, to just reach out, connect on LinkedIn or social media. And if you have any questions, certainly Eric and I can share links. I know that when we open the speaker submissions for TEDx Boca Raton, we always have the links on there. We give them that information so they have it right at their fingertips. This is what you should do before you submit. And frankly, it's been heartbreaking sometimes, because we'll have people that follow up with me, and people sometimes will email me their stories, and some of them are like incredibly inspirational or tragic or overcoming amazing adversity, but it just does not fit the mold of an idea worth spreading, and they just haven't honed it the right way and pitched it the right way. So just keep that in mind. I would recommend everyone to do research. The other thing that we touched on a little bit, but the title is so incredibly important. And I know I watch so many, and I'm sure everybody here does too, watch so many TED Talks. And to be honest, there are some that are not the best, that have more views because of the title. So there's some TED Talks that have millions of views because the title is incredibly provocative. And then there are some that are not that well watched, that the title is not as provocative and the talk is actually incredible. So, obviously from a marketing perspective, a PR perspective, I would say give a lot of thought to that, tap into the organizers, collaborate with them, brainstorm if possible, and then just do your own research. There's so much content out there online that you can tap into. And Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it's pretty comprehensive. I don't think, we don't know yet about 2021, but when we do, eventually we'll update the website and there'll be more information. We haven't updated the website in a while. by design, but, just keep going to TEDxBoca-Raton.com, and eventually, we'll have more information up there. Probably not until early December, I suspect, mid-December.
Yeah, and like Heather said, she applied to tons of TEDx events. Like, you can go online and look. There's like zip codes. You can look. There was Cece and I just attended TEDx. It was virtual, a Zoom TEDx Miami. It was awesome. And so they have an event that's local. And ironically, the same day, this was like a week and a half ago, the same day was TED Women. So I had TED Women the whole day, and then, which was amazing. There's incredible women that spoke at TED Women, and then TEDx Miami. But there's colleges and universities too that host TEDx events. So, and there's smaller ones as well. Like, some of them are not that stringent, with following the guidelines. So I would just put it out there, because, not to say, I mean, I feel like, in my opinion, it's important to follow the guidelines, because you want your talk to live on and be a good representation of you and the event itself. Yeah. Does everyone want to share in the chat your, if you want to share more about your social handles or connections, you can, obviously, you have everyone's name to reach out. Probably LinkedIn would be the best place to look. And Christina, do you have anything to add?
I think the only other thing that I would add is, and I tell this to my clients, as I'm sure you do the same, Cindy, if somebody like Cindy or Eric get your application, they're probably going to Google you. What are they going to find when they Google you? Is it going to be something relative to your speech topic? Is it going to be nothing? I just think in general, when building a personal brand, if you want to be a speaker, or I mean, really, if you just want to be successful in business, even as a potential employee somewhere, not even an entrepreneur, you have to have something that draws somebody's attention when they Google you, or if they look at your LinkedIn. So, I mean, for example, when you look at my LinkedIn, you're going to see a lot of media stuff, because I'm in the media business, and that was what I talked about in my TEDx talk. So I would just be mindful of what people will find when they Google you, because I'm sure people like Cindy and Eric will Google you if you apply to be a TEDx speaker.
That's great advice. And Cece, any final parting words?
I want to say, relax, have fun. It is an amazing experience, and it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. And it's everything you thought it was going to be. It's one of the highlights of my career so far as a speaker. And it's so funny because, people, when I say that I've spoken at TEDx Boca Raton, people go like, huh? And I go, yeah, TED with the red dot. And they go like, oh. And so immediately they start to look at me different, and their level of expectation is different. So, be careful what you put on social media. People do check, and, you don't want to have something out there that does not fit your brand. So absolutely have fun with it.
I do have a question for you, Cindy and Eric. I have a question. You hear about TED and TEDx. Obviously, there is a difference. TEDx is a smaller local version, is my understanding of the main difference. Is TEDx like where you start to move up to TED? Do you apply for TED the same way you talk for TED for TEDx? Can you explain the difference in how you go about getting the opportunity, or is it the same?
I'll let Eric speak to that, because normally we do cover that when we talk to a lot of our speakers, and I think that's a great question, Christina.
Yeah, so TED is the global brand, and they traditionally do one big event each year in April in Vancouver, and they curate all their own speakers. They created the TEDx events as local events for TED. And I think, truth be told, it spread beyond their imaginations. I believe that the focus is much more now a lot on the TEDx events. And, so again, the organizers, you go through the process to get the license. There's different licenses. I have the, what they call the standard license for a city happening, which is Boca Raton. And if you, are fortunate enough to get a spot at one of these TEDx events, your talk can be promoted to TED. We have not had a speaker yet promoted to TED, even though the events, all of your talks, the TEDx talks reside on TED.com. There is a difference. And when a speaker gets promoted from TEDx to TED, you'll know because they'll reach out to you. I have a little sense about, the criteria. It can take time, there's a lot of TEDx events. And so there's a lot for them to go through. But I think the way to bring attention to yourself is to apply for a TEDx event, because the main global brand will go and pretty much curate their own talks. And that's a pretty hefty commitment, once you get approved there. But I think the place to start is clear with TEDx. And I think, Boca Raton, TEDx Boca Raton, we really wanted to bring something unique to South Florida. And that's why we do bigger events. And we sprinkle a few people in there from the north that have topics that are very relevant for South Florida. Like the Heather and Christina and Cece, these were all people that were local. So it's always got it's weighted towards local speakers, right, in South Florida. But yeah, so there's a distinction. You could almost think of it as sort of, like a franchise, the licenses. The licenses are difficult to get. You have to really know, you have to be very organized, if you're going for a license about what you want to do. And then there's some criteria. Once you get the license, can you do under 100 people? Can you do over 100 people? There's some more steps to do a large event like we do. But yeah, that's a very good question, Christina, because there is a distinction between TED and TEDx, and TEDx is really the local TED version of TED.
Right. And I would just to piggyback on that, and also what Cece said earlier about, TED brand it's incredible what they've built, and the community, it really is a community. I mean, our team is like a family. We've worked together. We, late nights, and even the speakers. I mean, this is a group and a connection and a community. So I would encourage anyone who wants to get involved, whether it's a speaker, like Cece said, she volunteered for 2 years before she ended up becoming a speaker. I mean, then you get the inside scoop and you become part of this network and you can learn a lot more. So if, and I'm not saying you should wait to submit, definitely submit to as many TEDx's as you want to or you can, but I would encourage you to join as a volunteer, even if it's for the day of the event or for a couple of meetings, because it is a community. And I know Heather had to hop off, I guess, or she got bumped off, but we did talk about when we started, we probably will do another fireside chat with these speakers, because we had so many people. We had over 100 people register, and there were so many people that were interested in more of a, we wanted to make it webinar style and very impromptu and informal and conversational, but we'd love to host something where people can actually see each other face to face too. So now that we have everybody's emails, we'll certainly be keeping you posted. I know the group that I'm started an initiative called the Sisterhood for Success, because I really believe in women's advancement and empowerment and women's community and helping each other. And obviously men are welcome too. So in closing, any final words? We just want to thank everybody for coming. Hope that you got value from this. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. LinkedIn is probably the best place to reach out. But Joy, any final words? Good luck on your Ironman.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, they have the music playing now too. No, but I would just say, if this is something that you are really, this is your dream and this is a big goal of yours, take everything you heard, tonight to heart, and really, like keep pursuing it every way you can. Don't give up and think that it's too big of a goal, or I'll never be able to do a TED Talk. Like, stick with it, because everything they talked about tonight, it had a lot to do with mindset, which translates to every area of our life, right? And so, continue to have that growth mindset, which is what I really stress, and keep pursuing this, and it'll come together. So don't give up, stick with it. That's my best advice.
Great. Those
Thank
are great,
you, ladies, for being on
great
here.
parting words. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Thanks, Christina, CC, Heather, Eric, Joy. Have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.